something I guess I can mention. I'm a Christian now, guys.
Again, with you, I don't know. It's not that you do bits, because you're not like a bitty guy. Like you're very.
I
serious
do in a way. Yeah.
But it's like a.
Well, it's a bit. Sometimes it's like people can't tell if the thing I'm revealing about my personality is me doing a bit, or it's me being genuine. And something I've just learned about this sort of sarcastic, satirical sense of humor that's kind of like the core of my sense of humor is that, especially when we start talking about this coincidence of opposites, it's like I can think a horrible thing and a moral thing at the same time. So it's like sometimes the sarcastic portrayal of like a horrible shadow side of human being, it's not that, oh, this is just so untrue and I'm actually like a really good guy. It's like, no. It's just that I'm a complex person that holds both, understands one is good and the other's bad. So I can say the bad one in a facetious way where it's like, we can laugh at it and like recognize this is an immoral thing to think. Yeah. Or say, and to say in this way, so lightheartedly.
And I think for you, not yet has there been like this like show space or thing that you can facilitate that in. So you do it in everyday life, and sometimes people are just like, wait, what the fuck? What the fuck is wrong with Cameron? What's he saying? I'm like, nah, this dude's like, he's tapped into something right now. And he's he's tapped into something right now. And he's having fun with shit. And like I'll see it obviously in like your stand-up format. And while it goes to like certain extremes, I just like at its core, I always have gotten it, and like I get it. I was like, oh, but then sometimes it's like, is this a bit like opening up the door yesterday and seeing you at a Jesus piece,
right?
And just be like, and then you said, oh, I'm a man of Christ now, which you've said to me like seven times before, because you've done albums about it. You've done,
dude, it's
OnlyFans, Jesus OnlyFans.
Yes,
shit.
Looking back at some of the lyrics, it's like, and like I have kind of been doing. I've almost been jokingly saying I'm a Christian or saying Christian things for the past several years, but not in like this disparaging way where I'm like, I'm definitely not that. There always has, not always, but in all those years of even facetiously doing that, has been this understanding of like, look, even the people that like claim to be atheistic and say that there's no God and that Christianity's dumb or anything like that, like if you're living in America, in the Western society, you are operating on a Judeo-Christian ethos way more than you're aware of.
Yeah.
Like it is literally the ethos that is in the Bible, and both the New Testament and the Old Testament, the amalgamation of these things. It is embedded into the culture and society and the family that you grow up in. Even if they're like, that stuff is bullshit. It's like, no. This is like your innate sense of what is right and wrong, because it's not that the Bible was written and then we started behaving that way. It was that we've always behaved this way. We've developed this behavior, and the Bible is us writing that behavior down in a form for the first time. So like now we have
behavior manual type,
yes,
or just like observation.
And it's an abstract sort of behavior manual where it's like, it's a literary story. It's got these behaviors and values embedded in them for the most part, and then there's some explicit ones in there. When
you were like through this like oral tradition sense, and it's like it came down this long, and every story, not every story, but certain stories or whatever it is, can hit you in like a core way. And
right.
You're like, oh, so this is something about like human hardwiring.
Yes.
That's like in there.
Yeah. So something I've been thinking about with this line of like me being sarcastic in terms of saying things like, I love you all, go with Christ, or my brother in Christ, what I was saying was like, so looking back at some of my lyrics, even when I was just like totally not into it, was like, man, I am saying Jesus and God, and I'm talking about these things anyway, without like consciously feeling that close or attentive towards these things in the way I am now. But the line with the sarcasm thing was like, sometimes my sarcastic tone is not necessarily about how I feel about a thing. Sometimes it's more about an awareness I have of how others feel about it. Like it would be really uncomfortable for this person if I sincerely went up to them and I said, may Jesus be with you. Where if I do that, like how I did yesterday, where I got in Zach's face or whatever, and I was just like, I will never behave immorally because he is always watching me. You know? And it was just like, it was done this way where like, I am sincere, but also understand how silly this sounds to the two others that are around me, especially coming from me.
Yeah.
And so there is like this, to me, I feel like it's an aspect of humility where it's like, by all means, let's laugh about me and what may be genuine.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to know what your process for coming to this realization was. Was it through you writing music, or was it just like I got high and I realized that God is in this
That was it. I smoked one joint. Yeah. And I was like, oh, God's real.
You smoked one weed, please.
I smoked one weed.
One weed, please. I need to see God.
Well, I mean, I would say the process has just been the amalgamation of everything that's happened to me in my life. And this way of looking at it, like, I don't see this awakening and enlightenment as things that I consciously willed into being. To me, this largely has to do with if you want to look at life as there's you and there's everything outside of you, or another way, there is what seems to be you and you identify with and is really the borders of your free will and conscious control. And then there's everything that's not that. And you think about the relationship between these two fundamental pieces of reality for you and the other, you're constantly in a flowing creative collaboration with these things. And I think so I could definitely make the case that me being so obsessed and deep into just creativity, personal making art and pieces or whatever, as nihilistic and closed-minded about that process as I may have been, and secular with my rhetoric as I may have been for most of my life, there was just a slow realization and reframing of that process, which got me to understand how divine creativity itself is and how like synonymous it is with this whole idea of there being a creator being and a creative force that is inherent and inside of everything.
Yeah.
And
I think we take that out of we put on a different meaning when we think, like, when people were having religion say like the creator, and then we always think about these like physical forms of he made us in his image, or this thing or this thing. It's always these like physical things, but it's like, what about creating just a thought, or like the creator of that particular thing? So you're saying like the idea that those ideas did come from something higher is like to be respected, essentially?
Yes. And I think it's a matter of getting down to what is it exactly that we have control over. And I think that's it, is like prior to 2017, right when I started making this 5-hour movie, right before I had this awakening, I would say that my view was very mechanistic and scientific, and it was like, the world was dead. It wasn't mysterious. We've pretty much figured most of it out through science, and if there's anything I want to know about, I can just look it up, or I get it, you know? And I know that there's things I don't know or just don't care about, whatever. But otherwise, I'm just a guy in a flesh body, and I like to make art and cause havoc and joke around. Like, that's the extent of me. And that's like sort of just...
It feels flat.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the awakening was more like, the word consciousness came into my field of attention, and when I looked at it through that same lens of, okay, let's look into the scientific perspective on consciousness, since that's the way I analyze the world. That's my source of truth. And then I realized, science can't figure this one out. And it's like fundamental. In fact, consciousness is the thing which we engage in something like science. And then and I think that was the essence of the awakening, is waking up to seeing the wall of your own human limitation and limited consciousness and ability to understand and get it. And then you see all these human creations, which would be things like philosophy and science and religion itself, to the degree that we have played a creative role in making text and books, carrying out tradition, having conversations about these things. And, so back to this whole like there's you and your limited free will, the walls and container of that. And then there's everything else. And it's recognizing you're in a constant creative collaboration with that. And that the thing that's outside of what you identify as you is way bigger and like way more powerful and plays a way bigger role than you in what your life ends up being and who you end up being. And this question of like where thoughts come from. Well, it's like I never questioned that. I was like, of course it's my thought. I'm making them up. I'm thinking, it's like, am I? Like
I've seen people toss out that theory of like, every idea has already been made. Mm-hmm. It just has to like pass through you. So like the idea of, a coffee phone, it's there, it's out there. Like any infinite idea has already been made and the universe has it, or whatever space has it. Mm-hmm. And then somehow it'll pass through a form and like it would be through you. So like, I made this piece of art. Mm-hmm. But it was already there, and it just like it had to come. So it's like I can't remember what the theory was, but it was like idea permanency or something in that idea where it's like these things are actually tangible and you can pluck them.
Yes,
essentially.
Yeah.
Or you can tune into them or something. Like
yes,
that.
Yeah. And I honestly feel that the extent of our free will and the role we have in this creative collaboration. And here's the thing of the moment that happened to me a month and a half ago is I finally decided to stop referring to this infinite void of complexity that's beyond me. I finally decided to go, it's a good idea to call that God and to see this as a personified entity. It makes everything more fun. It's a way more fun story. The world becomes alive. You start to value yourself in a very profound way, and in that same way you start to see the value in every other single human being, and not just in human beings but in every piece of nature, and like even the more like synthetic and industrial things, like the human creations, even like the things that we think we maybe are fucked up and antithetical and killing nature. It's like, to me, I see the beauty in that, and I see the beauty in the nature that we're in as well. It's just that there is beauty and love and creativity to be found in everything. And I think that's what the choice we have in the free will. It's not the thoughts, the intuitions, the images and imagination and the forces. They're not things that we will into being. They're things that we give our attention to, and we have a choice on what we continue paying attention to and what we act on and engage with consciously. That's it. But in terms of like what's coming up, we don't control that.
Yeah.
We just control how we engage with it and respond to
like
it.
Once it hits you talk about that human limitation
and how open
lens.
we are to it. That's a big part of it.
Yeah. Like, well, and this you're saying there's this human limitation lens. There's this like perspective we can't see past. But that doesn't mean that there's not shit swimming around out there. Just like, at least in my head, I see it as like things swimming around in there. And then we can't do anything with it until it passes through our veil, whatever that is. And we talked yesterday, we're like, and sometimes that's an open thing, and then sometimes it's like a resistance thing. And but the fact is, it has its own space. It is very real, and that to you is God. And I like that concept. And then the idea that as a base, because these
and I also want to be really clear about that. Yeah. To me, it's not that is the totality of God, because we can never get our heads around what the totality of God is. It's that we can point to these things,
or the idea that you would like to refer to that as God,
right?
And these various traditions, because we talked and you said like it's not just like, obviously like I'm choosing Christianity, but there's Judaism, there's Muslim, there's all these things. If you pick this like conduit essentially to personify, like it helps in some way.
Yes,
and I like that. And while we talked about spectrum and stuff, I'm a very like middle, like I can't believe there's nothing, and then I also can't turn like just a blind eye to the way like just certain organized religions just operate. All of them. Not everybody is doing some stuff that's like, hey man, like I don't think this is the root of what this stuff's supposed to be. And I feel like I need to comment on it, or I feel like I need to feel some type of way about it. Your concept of you can do both while being in it, or like you can do both in that, is interesting to me. Like I like thinking about it that way. It's like,
yeah,
I don't know. I've been wrapping my brain around that for the last like day or so. I'm like, okay, I kind of see what you're going with.
Yeah, and another thing too, because this was I think the growing pain that I got, as amazing and beautiful as that awakening moment was, and like my life, how it's unfolded and developed over the past 6 years since then. The downside of it, of being in this sort of place, how I talked about the tree analogy, where like, let's see the major religions, you're in this forest, there's all these there's like 5 or 6 big trees. There's the western trees and the eastern trees, and a lot of the spiritual types, they want to hug all the trees for a little bit.
Is each tree wearing its respective garbs?
Yes.
There's a little Pope tree, there's a little Catholic tree.
Yes. The agnostic people and even like the spiritual but not religious people, they want to stand in the forest and be able to hug each tree a little bit, kind of at their preference, and maybe hug no trees for a little bit and just stand and look at them. But there is something about, if you pick one main tree to hug most of the time, the longer you hug it, the more of its wisdom starts to come out and you absorb more of it. And to me, I feel that the thing that was growing was in this openness and this space of just kind of pure consciousness and absorbing information. It was like my worldview and my meta story, the lens I was looking through reality, became way more complicated than I could handle. And I didn't have one canonical source of wisdom that was shaping it, or that it could shape itself around. And to me, I think it made a lot of, like, I would get in bouts where I was just creative and just shoot out of me. But then a lot of this in between time, it really felt like this spiritual dissonance, or like split between having one foot still in nihilism, like it really could be anything and I could be wrong and whatever. And then this other, like, open to what is out there, but not picking or focusing on a single canonical thing that's outside of me, and really ultimately relying on my ability to make decisions. And I think that I see decision making as this fundamental function that we have that's at the center of our free will, that is our fundamental function of engagement in creativity. And I saw myself having a harder time making decisions because I was holding so many different conflicting ideas that intuitive, non-rational, or just like hard thinking was the only way I could get out of it and make a decision. And that just felt wrong to me at a certain point, where now the shift that I've described to you that's occurred, it feels like now decision making is has returned back to it being this very natural thing. It's not that I don't think about things or ever struggle or take my time with the decision. It's just whether it's a decision I can make right now, and the decision that is made, that just happens for the most part. But then when a decision that is very complicated and presents itself, no, this one needs to be thought about, I just know that that's the case. And I'm trusting the process as a whole now more, rather than catching these glimpses into that feeling of being able to trust the process. Does that make sense?
No, yeah. I think, because you were talking about how you just set up a base, like you said that, like, it's funny because like I've been playing a lot of video games now, so I'm like, I like the idea of, you called it like the God slot, essentially.
Yeah, the God value.
Top of the
pyramid.
The God value at the top, which to me that's just like some shit from like I'm playing like Witcher or something. There's like a skill tree where it's like you set your base, and then how you live your life then sort of follows from that. As a concept, I really get it. Like, I understand it. And it's one thing that puts me in that like agnostic, like middle ground, is like just seeing what people do when they just muddy stuff up. And I'm like, man, this is such good teachings. This is a good thing. And I like this value in the higher thing. And then people just like, why are you being dumb? Like, why are we at this point where it's like, it's taking somebody's life? And the idea of like entering that space and like trying to better from within is really cool. But honestly, even on a personal level, like looking outside of it, I do find myself being like distracted or detached as a creative, specifically as a creative. I want to do these things. I want to do this. I want to do everything. And I always figured, I was like, well, if I can get on, let me get famous real quick. They'll give me the studios. They'll give me the time, and I'll create these ideas. I'll be these, everything people that you see out there in, like, in entertainment. I also, when you said like the God slot value thing, where like for me that value was like, oh well, I need to make it. Like I need to make it. So that's my high value. So that way I can fulfill these things and do all the stuff I said I want to do. What I'm taking from your concept is now it's like you can do that within yourself with this sort of like higher slot.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like maybe this isn't something you should rely on your own personal creativity to create. This is something that you should actually probably connect to like the infinitely shared creativity we all have. And that's why it makes sense to maybe look at something that has been around for a long time, and the amalgamation and creation of it itself is something that was not a single human ego's construction of.
Yeah, it's like these books and texts and scriptures and things were written over such a long period of time and shared and kept. And we felt like we needed to keep them.
Yeah. They weren't written with this intention of how are we going to manipulate the masses. It was not like a dark group of people that got around. And and even in those changes, like we were talking about how like, well, it's been picked up and the
Kings would do shit
the
with
King James version, it's like, but we do have access to all the translations prior, and we can see where things are changed and what was changed. And also like, think about someone trying to do that in the modern day. Like, President Biden's going to revise the Bible. He's going to add some stuff.
That'd be fire. Yo, if he brings back old editions, like
well, I think that's the thing is
like we got Bible, we're running on Bible Vista now. Like, like we're gonna,
right. But there would how would he get away with doing something that the people that love the Bible and honor and worship it are going to be okay with and even honor? And you're not going to have all this text and response around it saying like, what he did, we don't honor that. We're still on the King James version. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that through every point in history. It's like
we get a Apple Android version of the Bible.
Right. There's a way to look at it. It's like, well, King James was one guy and he just did what he wanted with the Bible. But then there's another way to look at it where it's like, no, God was at work in the reason why James ended up being a king at all was all creative happenstance outside of this single ego's choosing. And for him to even be in that position and to be inspired to do exactly what he did so it's like, and it's not to say what he did is the most recent thing and it's the right thing. Like it's smart to take things into context. Like, okay, this is what he changed. Now consider what the original thing was and what was changed and the speculation around what these changes mean.
And the bigger fact that you said that it's just people still come back to, like, it's not a, like, I know in our age we're a little bit more critical on stuff and like just as a people, because it's more modern and we pick at stuff. But then like you hit me with something and you were just talking about instead of focusing on that they did it, it's the why they did it.
Yeah,
like, damn, why did these old dusty dudes and scholars why did they like feel like this needed to happen? You know, and like form these rules, guidelines, whatever it is, and all of them do it separately, and then like figure out a way for them to all be together. Because there were like points in history where they kind of were mingling, and like we weren't upset at this person for that religion or this that. It was just kind of like this is my belief and it helps me find my inner peace. Or like creativity, which is like I value my inner creativity. Like I want to be able to make the things and do the things and like get the things done that like, oh man, this is really cool. Like I would like to see this through. And I like your idea that like this could help that in some way.
Yes.
Yeah. Like that's something that I'm like, all right, I might entertain that idea. Yeah.
Well, I'd be interested to see.
You're not converting me, by the way. I mean, I'm not.
No, that's not my goal.
I'm not gonna get baptized tomorrow. But
fuck. All right. Well,
yeah, get that little
podcast was a waste.
Get that pool out of that room. Get rid of it. Take the bath toys out.
I was gonna baptize you in the clawfoot tub downstairs. Oh man.
But no, but my fault. You were on a point just before, right? Were you
I think I pretty much wrapped it. I mean, the other thing I want to say, because and it was a point I made towards the end of our conversations, I think, because it seems like the direction I'm going is I'm becoming a dogmatic religious person, but that's not the case.
No.
There's this kind of qualifier where it's like, there's a message I feel like I have for four groups of people. Like I have something I want to say to the purely atheistic. I have something I want to say to the agnostic / spiritual. I have something I want to say to the passive religious people. And then I have something I want to say to the dogmatic religious people. And that dogmatic religious group is like to acknowledge and respect the dogmatism. It's to say, hey, to be dogmatic about your religion serves utility. It is functional. It's the reason you have the depth and close relationship you have with your faith, and why it's so embodied in you, and then why your life is so harmoniously arranged around this thing that is bigger than you. That's why I respect it. But the thing I want to give you is I want you to be able to take that same respect I have for you and be able to apply it to those who think differently from you. So like, understand the functionality of your dogma, but have a detachment from it to the degree to where you can humor other ideas, or at least allow and make space for other ideas from other people.
You said that that the idea of humility being taught in religion is only partially the thing. You said humor is actually the thing. I like that statement, where it's like you say it's humility, but it's like humor, like the funny part about, or like just like that innate, like, I will entertain this and it's okay and it's respectful and it's all fun, kind of in a sense. Yeah.
I mean, because it's kind of like the humility is the first part, is understanding your limitation, but like the nihilistic or pessimistic thing to do is like, well, I'm limited, so I'm stupid, so I can't do anything. It's like, no. First, you have the humility, understand your limitation, accept your flaws, all that. And then, despite that, you go out and you humor the world. You play anyway, even though you're flawed, even though you're going to make mistakes, even though you're dumb. Like, you're going to say stupid shit. You're going to say the wrong things. You're going to say things you're going to disagree with tomorrow or several years from now, heavily.
Yeah.
And and I think that was really a major feature, is realizing how deeply anti-spiritual my anti-social developments over time have become. Like, I was talking to, like, I'm kind of coming out of this antisocial tendency I've had. And a lot of like the podcasting that I've done up to this point and watching them back and analyzing myself is realizing I'm awkward in conversation because I'm not here. I'm not seeing this as a live and amazing thing.
You are on. I've always told people, and I was like, because like, I've known you for a very long time, and I know like everybody's got opinions about everybody.
Yeah,
that's just the way we are in life. And my thing, I've always been at a base level, is like, yo, Cameron is just thinking on a, like, he's just
constantly thinking.
He is on a channel that most of y'all don't know. And it's like, it's not even a channel I'm on. I'm on my own channel.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this, where I was just like, I've just been able to tether on what he's on. I'm like, yo, yeah, like, I like, these people don't even know what's happening right now.
Right.
Like, this is just a whole nother thing. So it's like, you got to understand, like, he just thinks different.
I do. Yeah.
You got to, and it's like, because I think different, I think I've always just been able to like tap into that. And I'm like, okay, got you. And you feel like you feel like you're awkward in these,
Well, no, I think it was just like, I think what makes a good podcast host and someone who's just good in conversation is they ask good questions. They're genuinely engaged. They're genuinely curious. And so it was like the spiritual awakening got me genuinely curious about a particular set of aspects of this reality. And the enlightenment kind of filled in the rest. And I think the social element of that is really what kind of, like, I realized from watching this podcast, like, man, some people I'm just really... when the conversation's good, it's because the person I'm talking to is really a great conversationalist, and it's not me. And when I'm with someone that's awkward like me, then we have an awkward conversation. But it's like, no, how can I genuinely become someone who's good at conversation. Well, it's like, I got to let go of just wanting to act out that reality. There's something in me that's going wrong that's causing this problem, that is making me antisocial, that is making me not socially present or interested or curious.
Yeah.
That is, and this is this sin of pride of being caved inward on oneself and not the beauty of the world outside of you, and looking at this massively more intelligent, creative partner you perpetually have that is God. And I think that is acknowledging God and seeing the world as alive. Well, now it's just every little piece that I'm looking at on a moment to moment basis is alive and infinitely interesting. And now I'm there. You know, like, I feel like, I don't know how this podcast will seem to others, but I feel I am way better at socializing now suddenly. And it's not that I've never had this ability. Yeah. It comes out randomly. But now it feels like a little more default.
Now instead of it coming out randomly, then you noticing it, it's more of like now that I've noticed it so many times, I can like not just like replicate it for like a fake reason, but like, no, let me like actually put this in my like my hardwire. You were saying that shit. You were like, you hit me with a bar yesterday. You're like, people like the idea of like picking a religion is better in the God slot than just one ideology, because you were like, that's like running.
Oh yeah,
it's like running that's like living off a program instead of software. It's like software. What's that shit?
Yeah, I remember the exact analogy. So it was like trying to pick a single person's philosophy and put that in a God slot as opposed to a religion is like trying to run your entire computer on a single software rather than an operating system. It's like, no, the religion's the operating system. You need that, and then you can overlay single man philosophies on top of that all day. Because that's the thing is there's so much great philosophy out there. It's just not the same level of depth and robustness, nor creative. And that's the big thing. The creative process which led to the birth of the major religions is something way more complex than the normal creative process of a single human being writing a book.
Yeah.
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 In there. But I mean, and philosophy, but see, here's the catch-22 is a philosophy kind of like creativity theory, like I'm like laying out, is it can help you perhaps see that, which I'm describing. It can help bring someone to see that relationship. Like a philosophy can help you see these are operating systems and that this is a software. So it's like, this philosophy is best going to be used if you go get an operating system to overlay this with.
It won't work on everybody. Yeah, I know that.
And that, and also, I don't want it to get across that I'm trying to evangelize here, especially not to a particular religion.
No, I don't even mean it that even in that way. Just like that idea within creativity theory, because I even realized that like I said, you're on your own frequency. I'm on my own frequency, and people don't even get my frequency. Like people just like. Just the idea of you being a creative and the idea of like, oh yeah, I'm going to go tell jokes. I'm going to attempt to tell jokes for a living or be this person, this artist. And then some people cheer you on, but they're still in their head just like, that's fucking weird. That's weird. You want to do that with your life? That sounds dangerous. That doesn't sound safe. I'm going to go chill at Buffalo Wild Wings. You know, like it's like they just want to be in this like this headspace. So like, I know that like an idea is like grandly proposed as creativity theory. It'll take a while to hit some people because they can barely stomach the idea of like going to an open mic. Right. So, but I like it though. Like I get it. I like the idea of it.